Hello, Internet. As you can see, I'm not in my normal location, and I am also not alone. And joining me today is Adam Mickelson, who you may recognize as the host of the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast. And together we have seen the new reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it, version of Ghostbusters. A film that has had quite a...
Remake, remastered, revengeance. There you go. We coined it.
Yeah, we covered all our bases, but basically this film has had quite a controversial history that we have been following, and now comes the payoff, the film itself, and really, this has been like straight up flame war, but at the end of it, I think we both kind of just agreed that the film, despite all the controversies, has just been okay. Just...
below average, but okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like the interview whole fiasco, where the story and the flame wars leading up to it, basically...
I don't even call it the interview fiasco anymore, I just call it Romney's War.
But point being, it's a lot like that, where you have all of this build-up from the flame wars, the internet controversy, and all that, and it's like a firework that you light, you have the fuse boiling down, but then it just goes...
Yeah, we've been following this since, like, the first story that actually broke, where they were actually claiming that this was not going to follow any of the Ghostbusters tropes. This was going to be a legit ghost hunting kind of deal.
Yeah.
And, well, the product that we got clearly isn't that. It's clearly trying to either be a spin-off, a remastering, or a sequel to Ghostbusters.
Yep. So with that note, let's begin this special episode of Romney's Reviews. So let's start by kind of making it clear to the audience where we kind of came in regards to Ghostbusters. In my case, I grew up, pretty much, I haven't really seen any of the movies in their entirety. I know the theme song, and it pretty much begins and ends with me with the cartoon series Extreme Ghostbusters. That's pretty much my only real frame of reference that I have.
Yes. My reference is that I'm a Ghostbusters fan through and through. I saw the movies. Now, here's the thing. I actually saw the movies as a kid, but I was actually really afraid of them. I hate to confess that, but yes, I was actually scared of Slimer. So I didn't appreciate the movies until my 20s, but in the meantime, I was watching the real Ghostbusters on, I think it was Fox at the time that had it, so like tons of cartoons on it. I've watched Extreme Ghostbusters both on TV and on YouTube to finish it out. I've also enjoyed Ghostbusters, the video game that just basically barely came out from Terminal Reality. So I'm a Ghostbusters fan through and through, and I walked in after dealing with all the stories and seeing all the hate that came out of this. I walked in wanting to enjoy this film, just wanting to have a good Ghostbusters movie again.
Yeah, and really when it comes to the film, at least in my opinion, I think the biggest problems that we've got with this is that it's the fan service and just some of the mean-spirited humor that they put into this film because of all the backlash they've basically been getting throughout the entire time this thing was being made.
The perfect example was they actually ripped one of the comments right out of the, I think it wasn't the trailer, it was it was a Twitter comment from the hospital campaign that they did, where the four ladies actually went to a hospital.
Yeah, it was a children's hospital. That they happened to be nearby shooting.
And they took the comment and read it. And at that point, it wasn't about the movie anymore. It was about the comment and the fact that you could very clearly tell that the actresses and the writers didn't appreciate it.
The characters had some moments where they felt like actual characters and not just punchlines, not just singular tropes, but...
And then they get steamrolled.
Yeah.
By either mean-spirited jokes that don't make sense, or just bad writing.
Or them trying to rip off the Avengers. Yeah.
That happened too.
Yep, because they, during the climax, which as much as I liked some aspects of the climax, well, they thought they pretty much tried to be serious with the action in so far as they basically wanted to be like, oh, this will look really cool in the trailers. Doesn't matter if it's completely against the character or basically defies any internal consistency with how these weapons that they apparently built from scratch work. It just looks cool. One thing that also hurts it is that they make the key male characters straight up idiots, but I'm not saying that's like, oh, I'm a man and I'm offended, but more that there isn't an internal consistency to that stupidity. That's the real problem, is that they have them be stupid, but the stupid actions they have them do don't have an internal logic, because when you're writing good stupid characters, you want there to be that consistent you want it the actions of the stupid character to make sense to that person. You want there to be an internal consistent logic, but there just isn't here. They just figured, and this is primarily with Chris Hemsworth's character, where it's like, oh, we're just gonna have him be stupid, but not really have it be consistently stupid.
Well, and so we've recorded this a couple of times, but I mean, the comparison that I made to you was that he wasn't just an idiot. It was like Sony almost resented that he was Thor, and so at that point, since he, one of the things people love from the Thor movies is he's 100% beefcake, they said he's 100% beefcake and nothing else.
It was almost kind of like they were wanting to almost make a beefcake version of Lenny from Of Mice and Men, but then they realized that would have been too depressing, so they just had him do the stupid things that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then but still have him be the clear, eloquent Chris Hemsworth voice.
The other thing I want to point out with the male cast being idiots that actually felt downright offensive to me, and the perfect comparison that I can make is one of the beefs I had with the Josh Trank Fantastic Four, where every character in that movie is categorized as a genius in their own right, except Ben Grimm. He had a lot of common sense logic to him, and that was fine. I was okay with that. But it almost got to a point where he was so dumb it was offensive in the movie. And that's how these male cast members in Ghostbusters come off at.
And keep in mind, we're not saying this oh, we're men, they don't need to be smart men. It's just more like, it just felt like they didn't know how to write stupid characters effectively, because there's a way to do it right, but here it's just oh, we'll just have them do stupid stuff because they're stupid. They don't actually think through, okay, well, what is the logic this character is following?
They're Peter Griffin, is what they're Homer Simpson or Peter Griffin levels of stupid.
Definitely more Peter Griffin, because at least Homer Simpson has somewhat of a consistent internal logic.
I would agree with that, because I almost waited in some cases for this moment for Kevin to fall down on the street and scrape his knee, and then we get the whole 5-minute thing. This is another thing that hurt it was the humor. The humor was very Seth MacFarlane inspired. That joke has been run into the ground, buried, had its funeral, been all nice, had the flowers, and then had the voodoo demonic ritual to raise it back from the dead just to beat it over the head with a hammer. That's where this is.
Yeah, and it's a real shame, because there are scenes where the main cast, the characters they play, are actually allowed to be the characters, where you actually see shades of unique personalities, unique ideas, where you see actual people and not just tropes and punchlines for the sake of the trailer. I mean, the best comparison I give is that this is kind of in a similar boat to Gem and the Holograms, where you have half the movie that wants to be a faithful but kind of serious, unique take on Ghostbusters, and then the other half is basically desperate attempt to placate the fan base, but still have things that are marketable in the trailers.
But then throwing up the middle finger at the fan base.
It's it's kind of like having a Japanese business executive who is flipping you the bird while profusely apologizing at the same time. Seeing the characters building the arsenal, building the proton packs and the various things, there you actually got to see some characters, and you even get to see some unique humor that is motivated by how the characters actually act. I think the character that actually has the best writing out of all of them would have to be Patty.
Yes, Patty.
Because, I mean, you see the humor, but you also see that a lot of the humor around her character is based on actions her character is taking. You see the logic of her character.
One of the other things that we did was I compared it to the original 4, and the fact that you didn't have to have action heroes or anything like that. You had 2 scientists. You had a guy who was pretending to be a scientist but was very much bluffing. And then you had a guy who knew New York. That's what this was to some extent. I would actually dare say it was 3 scientists and then Patty, who knew New York, and that's all that... She was pretty much the badass of the cast. She was the one that knew how to actually fight, whereas we had 3 other scientists who knew ghosts and who knew the paranormal, who knew engineering.
And yet they're still given the action scene moment that defies the internal logic of the film. And that's really the problem here, is that they just needed to stick to their guns and just stick to their own story they wanted to tell, rather than giving the middle finger to the critical people who were bashing it before it even came out, and without trying to placate the fan base. This is like the new Dante from Devil May Cry, where they had their own idea, but then after the backlash, they basically tried working in so many aspects of the original Dante to placate the fan base that it's a half-formed idea.
This doesn't feel like a movie to me. This feels like a marketing campaign. Because it just feels like there's so many great ideas that are just ruined by having to shove the product down my throat. And you even hit the nail on the head. is that they have to placate the fan base, but they also have to be pissed off at the fan base. And so at that point, you just needed to make a movie where you didn't have these biases happening.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It has some good ideas, but it's a below average, mediocre film that has a lot of baggage that's keeping it from being even a decent or good film. That's pretty much pretty much the best way we can say it.
Yeah, I mean, like, to put it into the context of the stuff that I review, this would be an okay first entry into a game series, but it would need a lot of work. And at that point, the second entry would need to show some significant improvement before investment could actually happen. And that's kind of my issue with this, is that it feels way too much like stuff was hammered down my throat. Because again, I wanted to like this movie. I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to be another outstanding achievement in the legacy of Ghostbusters, and it just kind of isn't.
I think the problem is that the people making this film let the haters get to them, and the marketing executives came in a panic, trying to basically,
which in turn colored the writing.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, a lot of the humor, I think a lot of the humor was seriously colored by their being pissed off at the fan base, and it comes across very, very well in that regard.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I think it actually overall hurt character development for these for the 4 cast members, as well as maybe even the side cast. It's a mess.
If they'd cut out the fan service and just had more faith in their own story, it could have been at least a decent film. But as for whether or not to see it in theaters, don't pay more than, say, $5. Like, I know that we have a local theater chain every Tuesday. They do something where the admission's $5. Don't pay more than $5 to see this movie, because it's not really worth much more than that, at least in my opinion.
And see, I would actually dare say that $5 is probably even too good for this. I would almost dare say wait until the dollar theaters, because then at that point, the real investment that you're going to get out of it is you're going to get some enjoyable popcorn, and you're going to get a couple of good moments there. If you want to go see a matinee, which a lot of people are going to want to, then by all means go ahead. But I wouldn't recommend more than just the dollar theater.
If you're someone like me who is only moderately familiar, you may get some enjoyment, but not a lot. So
if you're a fan, check your brain at the door. That's
or try to, because you'll go insane otherwise.
Yeah, but people who don't really know, you're going to be fine. This is going to be your kind of first experience, and it's fine.
Well, pretty much with that, all of everything we said, my rating that I give to Ghostbusters 2016, because apparently they wanted to do the Mortal Kombat thing and not give it its own unique title, because they couldn't make up their mind whether it's a reboot or a remake. But point being, the rating I'm giving it is a 3 out of 5.
My rating is going to be a 2 out of 5, and I know a lot of people are going to say that I'm being a hater in that regard, but there was a lot of potential, and I think a lot of that potential was horribly squandered. And so at that point, I think it's fairly safe to say, since Sony is backing it, that we're going to get a sequel somewhere down the line, unless they make some drastic changes to the staff and how they approach this film. It's not going to get any better.
It had good ideas. It had some potential. It's held back by... It just didn't have confidence in itself. That's pretty much the simplest way to put it. So, yeah, that's pretty much all we can really say about this new Ghostbusters.
Well, not all we can say, but that'll be for the discussion.
Yeah, pretty much that's all we can say. That's all we can say without getting into the specifics. But if you want to follow us over to the Romney's discussions of this movie, well, there'll be the annotation at the end of the credits. But for that, that's pretty much our thoughts on Ghostbusters. That's pretty much it for this special kind of long episode of Romney's Reviews. And yeah, thank you to Adam for joining me for this little excursion, adventure, exercise in futility.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And at least we didn't have to pay for it. That's the important thing.
That's the other thing, too. And also, we didn't have to sign any embargoes.
Because we ain't afraid of no embargoes.
We ain't afraid of no nothing.
But yeah, that's it for this episode. If you want to see more of Adam's stuff, go over to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Drac2326. That's where Geek News Reviews and Opinions is hosted. He does game reviews, does Let's Plays. He does a lot of things. Especially this summer, I do a lot of things. Yeah. So there's plenty of stuff for you guys to look into. Yep, so that's it for this episode. I'll see you all next time.